6:15. I'm going to go ahead and call the street committee meeting to order for August the 9th, 2022. You.
Very good. We have one item on the agenda this evening, and as was mentioned before, it is in the email, it is a new request for us. It is for a roadside memorial sign for an adult son of a former woman that used to live in Christiansburg. Her son was living in Christiansburg at the time of his death, and she's requesting a sign be placed on near the accident on South Franklin Street. This is not unique in that PDOT does have a program that they do they manufacture signs. They have a contractor that they have to go through. They have to purchase the sign, and then they actually require the person to put it up. I believe they actually require the people to put it up, and then it comes down after 2 years. It's up to the individuals to take it down. This is a new request for us. We do not have standards in place. If that would be something that you all would want to either talk about, in this meeting this evening, and continue to talk about it, or if you would like to actually, bring it forth this evening to council. And so I did want to show you, we did request that applicant, Ms. Davis, and you have a copy of the application here. Fill out a VDOT application. So we have the information here. This is basically what the sign would look like. You will these signs on 460 bypass of 81.
Going on bypass from Blacksburg this morning.
So she has actually purchased the sign, and she knows that if this were not to be approved, that she would have a sign. His name here, and then it would also have the date of his birth and then the date of the accident.
But as you said earlier, we as in the town currently right now don't have a policy at all, though.
We do not.
So my question would be, how can we say yea or nay? Don't have a policy yet.
Right, I guess it would do matter if you would want to approve this as a one-time approval without a policy in place, and then ask staff to come up with a policy, or if you would want to have staff do a policy and then you would want to consider it under those items. And I think, I think a number of the things in the policy, the VDOT requirements are, a number of these things really don't necessarily apply to us. I mean, we would prefer that town staff put up the sign, and that it is estimated, that the cost to put up a sign like this would be about $157 of public works time for materials. So, so that would be another question. That would be another expense to the applicant for this.
Because even if the town puts it up and then that 2 years is up, who's going to remove the sign? It's going to be the town again, or?
I would think that
so
would be.
Should I have a lot of correct?
Yeah.
just,
Simply because we wouldn't necessarily want, you know.
I know,
Yeah, someone removing the sign.
hanging on us,
right
on a
away.
pole,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So first, I'll say that I'm in support of this, and I think this is a really nice thing. And, my first question is, did she complete the VDOT application because that she just recognized that was an avenue to get a sign, and Christiansburg didn't have one, or is that, I mean, is this a Christiansburg road or a VDOT maintained road?
So it is a Christiansburg road, and that when she approached VDOT, they said that this, you know, we do not maintain, this portion of South Franklin, and that you would have to.
So she chose to go through their process and then bring that
Right.
to us, to purchase the sign and then bring it to us for,
When she spoke to Randy, he had suggested, you know, fill out this application so that we kind of see what your request is. And then bring that forward, you know, based on this, but knowing that these are not all of our standards in this application.
typically ask for the folks who purchase these signs to put them up themselves.
That is my understanding.
Even on, even like highways?
We have the service right to install.
Is she following everything that's in here? For example, the, insurance requirements, and, I mean, since this is not a VDOT maintained road, and town of Christiansburg doesn't necessarily require this VDOT application, it was just a recommendation to work through them to get it placed. Is that something that we're requiring, or is that something they can require because they're facilitating the process, or is that something that we need to decide in our own process?
That's something we could decide.
So do we know if she's following the insurance requirement that VDOT happens to have here?
My understanding is purchased the sign, but she's not.
If we ask to put a policy in place, how long do you think it would take us, whoever, to come up with a policy?
I think we would, use, if we were going to create a policy, we would use this as a base, and see what would the applicant, what applicable and what would not. I'm not sure if the insurance, you know, if it's within the right of way, that would be, that we would consult, you know, with our attorney on that. And, well, and with our risk manager, Deanna Cox, and our finance, that works with our insurance.
That's the concerns I have right now, that it seems there's a lot of questions that we need to ask before we go allow someone to put a sign up for us, liability, insurance, and everything else. I mean, if we can get this back within 2 weeks, I think that, like, to me, it's not to her, of course, it's not my family. But I just have concerns that we have no policy right now, and then we're gonna put the sign up, obviously, it sounds like. So if somebody gets hurt, it's gonna be on our staff members. But once again, we charge, if we, are we gonna charge her to put the sign up, or so, what does it say? I just have a concern that there is no policy in place. It's kinda like, put the two together, like the, boundary adjustment, we had no policy, then all of a sudden now we're writing, not all of a sudden, now we're writing a policy for boundary adjustments and everything else. So I guess, my background, unfortunately, I like to see policies. That's what I'm saying, it's not like it's gonna be 6 months down the road. I'm just concerned that we have no policy. Is this the first time this ever comes to the town?
Never seen it.
Never, it's the first time for everything, which is good.
But now, here's what I was telling Andrew and Randy when he was telling me about it, is I constantly get calls from people wanting to put memorial Vietnam deaths and stuff like that on the bridges and on named bridges after them, and, you know, it theoretically opened a real can of worms, unless we are very specific about the sign and the purpose and the time.
Mhm.
And I think we should be very specific if we allow this. They will pay us to put it up. They will pay us half that figure to take it down. And then we will hold that sign after 2 years, we will notify them and hold it up to 6 months for them to pick up. And after that, we'll destroy it.
Mhm.
We'll recycle it on some other side we're not going to use.
They want something about maybe a car.
There's a lot of,
Or that we would have the right to remove it, if,
Right.
you know, if
Yeah.
it became a disrepair.
Very similar to
And you
what,
could just-
yeah.
Yeah.
If we were to put that up, does the insurance requirement become ours? If someone's doing it?
Right. We can look into that a little bit further. I don't necessarily see it as any different than any other street sign.
As long as it's installed with the proper breakaway pole, I don't see.
So it sounds like maybe we just need to brainstorm a few, take some inspiration from this VDOT policy and brainstorm a few things. I have a feeling that if we approve this, there may be other people who are interested in doing that. It's not gonna, probably not a common thing, but it's not gonna be a bad idea to, if we're making the decisions already about what we want to require and ask of her and what we're gonna do, we might as well go ahead and put it in a policy. And I don't know how long she's been waiting for us to talk about this, so the sooner that we can do this, I'm sure that would, we really appreciate that.
I know they are planning a celebration of life at the end of the month. And she said that it would be ideal if it was up at that time, but
So, I mean, I don't want to rush anything, but I also don't want to leave her hanging, so if we were to, you know,
so
when the
your next meeting
celebration-
would be the 23rd.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and so you can have it ready by the 23rd.
We can even communicate if we need to by email on this decision, so then on the 23rd, we feel comfortable with what that policy will be. I think VDOT is pretty comprehensive. You're right, there's some stuff in here that we don't need. But, like, if we can address the insurance requirement and address that we're gonna install that, and like the mayor said, our, you know, whatever our requirement is for cost and taking the sign down and holding it, and just make that really clear so that she knows what to expect, then, I mean, I'm in full support of us putting that up. So, go ahead, Sam.
no, I was gonna say, I'm not against putting the sign up. I just want something in writing
Mhm.
to say, here it is, because we do, once people learn about this, we may have more and more requests. We don't know. We drive all over, especially the bypass interstate, we see homemade memorials where people stick them up and stuff like that. I mean, if we uniform, you know,
I think that's what we really, because,
well, I do, yeah.
down in Canberra, they had that cross, I don't know if that cross for Dale Ashworth is still up or not, where he was
Oh, that-
out on a motorcycle.
I think it's gone.
I don't know, but I know it was up,
Yeah.
and it was, I don't know if it was on our property or Norfolk Southern property. Now, that's, because it was inside the guardrail on
Yeah.
Depot Street.
Mhm.
I think, a policy, that's what we expect, then, it's kind of coarse, but you may have to say, hey, that's a homemade sign, it's not, doesn't fall within, or at least anybody that wants to put a sign up has to apply for the right to do that on, and then it would be on town right away. Now, if they want to put it in their own yard, that's nothing,
Yeah.
that's up to them.
Yeah, if they're on private property, then,
I mean, she doesn't live here,
No.
and so that's the one.
VDOT does have a manufacturer that they require folks to go through. Public Works, just in general talks, and we'll continue to talk, but they believe they can manufacture the sign. So that may be, you know, cost savings potentially for,
especially if,
someone who.
and if it's a situation where we determine that part of this is that they pay the fee for us to install, but they're saving that money on the purchase of the sign. I mean,
Well,
I
they'd
just
have to
don't,
pay they'd have to pay for production of the sign to us,
right,
but it would still be cheaper, I think.
right, that's what I'm saying. So where she may have spent quite, more money on this sign, in the future, if someone was to purchase the sign through us, it would be less cost, but also we would be charging to sign up, if that's what you all recommend for the
Do
policy.
you address the fact that these particular signs that you're seeing are legal accident deaths?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you go about in love and memory of my husband, Charlie, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think,
That's it, I was just thinking that actually.
Yeah.
Is there I've only scanned this, do they have any sort of like a time limit of like, if it's been so many years, like, within this certain number of years, like you can request a sign? Is that something we need to think of?
It,
Oh.
Oh,
Sorry,
Patrick.
Not you, Siri.
That wasn't talking to you.
I think, the way they try to kind of, to work around that is that it's any human fatality that occurs in the state highway system is eligible for a memorial. Only family members of the victim may obtain, a land use permit with the land. Only allowed one memorial per fatality. We could certainly add any, something like this, and then, if any other direction you want to go.
it's a little like a public service. I mean, it's a reminder to drive safely. That's what,
Yeah.
and I think that's stands out to me about it. It's not like Aunt Rosie, who was just a good old girl
Right.
type thing.
If you would want a time frame, we could certainly get within the last 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel strongly about a time frame.
We could put it upon council approval or something along those lines, that it could, our standard is 5 years.
I just,
Knowing if you use program, someone may come,
that's true.
remember that one memorial.
And I would never want someone to be like, what a great thing, I'm really excited about this memorial for my loved one, just to come to us and us go, oh, sorry, it's been too long, and I feel like that would be very hurtful. So if we were, I don't wanna get so wrapped up in the weeds that we can't, push this forward and make this happen, but I do also wanna keep in mind that if anybody else looks at this policy and there's any room for them to ask something that gets denied, that we're anticipating that, just have an expectation that's not gonna upset them later.
How many signs will we put in a certain distance? That's what I'm saying. Once again, it's just questions.
I think those things are designed for the site of the accident,
Close as possible.
as close as possible to the site of the accident.
Right. There's a lot of questions that I have myself, I'm not against this by any means.
And we would want to, with any sign, that a request, usually goes through the engineering department first, and they look at a location that would meet, typical standards, close to a street, not being too close to an intersection, not being too close to the street, any other factors, sight distance,
Well,
potentially.
sight distance, and whenever you put anything in right of way, there's a concept called, it will have to be placed appropriately in the clear zone. That's the area that you can safely corner. You obviously don't want something to be off the edge of pavement if it's 45. Further placement is definitely a consideration.
I feel good about us installing it because we'll have those things in mind versus asking someone to do that.
And another thing is, before the sign goes in, if I agree that I think we should install it, because we don't know where the utilities are.
Right.
So you have to always
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great point. So do you all feel like within by the next meeting that we can have a policy we can look at and hopefully approving that, taking it to council and?
Right. I do think that, VDOT has, as you said, there's a lot of things to mirror here, probably some things not, and then we'll add, some of the comments.
And that policy, is that something that the street committee can approve, or is that something that the street committee can recommend for approval and then take to council for approval? Do we need to do anything else besides that?
think as a policy, it probably
Well,
would
in
go
this
forward to
case,
council.
I think tonight I would address it, that, you know, we have this request, if we said we're favorable with it, and we have requested that a policy be written, presented at the next meeting for final approval. That way you're saying, hey, we understand what they're doing, but we have offered, as a committee, we would like the town staff to provide that policy.
And then we think that's a reasonable expectation that Public Works would be able to install that sign for their,
We'll have to work with them, we may, yeah, we
We
may
can
not be able to
We
meet,
can
but I think,
ask,
that, yeah.
Well, first thing, we gotta have the sign, and I know she lives in North.
And she wasn't sure if she was going to get it because it, with everything now, you know, it was back ordered, you know.
oh, I know.
So she's not sure.
I thought you said she had.
Well, she ordered it and she has a picture of it.
Gotcha.
Got it,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, even if everything went perfectly, we'll have to have the utility.
I wouldn't wanna rush approving something while we're trying to approve a policy just for that, but, you know, I was just curious what we thought that timeline would be, so we can
And
communicate.
we also need to speak with the risk management.
So as of this
We'll be
day,
back in touch with her.
as of this day, have we engineering been out to the site?
I have not been out to the site.
Okay, so that's enough.
But I have looked at it, on, Google Street View. There is, I think it's a substation adjacent to the access point. So it may not be exactly at this location, but we'll
Right.
try to position it as safely and as closely as we can.
So that's why I said, what happens if we put the sign up, then the family members come back in later and say, that's not where it happened? I mean, not saying, it's as close as possible. You know, we weren't there, and so, but
We can check
Thank
into
you.
that, what that wording is in.
as close
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah, well, we tried to put the last place he was alive, but
Well, yeah, okay, well, I think we're on the same sheet here, that I would rather have a policy in place. And if we can get that, what, within, say, next couple, right there, it is, more or less, you know.
So we'll plan to meet again on the 23rd.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Maybe 6 o'clock, and just have a little extra time, and I do think there'll likely be another street committee item, that Mr. Bishop had brought up.
It's not very enough, I forgot what I brought up.
Brian, actually have the drawing here.
Oh, good, because you know, when you get older. You know.
This one may black and white copies, but that's a little easier to see.
Oh, okay, duh.
Yeah, so,
You know what threw me off,
yeah,
when you said acre swarm?
right,
I know
right,
what's
yeah,
coming.
yeah.
The light
What
bulb
used
came
to be-
on.
What used to be acre swamp.
Well, the light bulb came on,
No,
okay.
medical subdivision.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I'm with you,
Right.
I remember doing this.
Yeah, so there, what is happening is employees, are being asked, we believe, to park on the street, and when they're parking close to the North Franklin intersection and then close to the driveway intersections, it's causing some issues and some traffic concerns. And so we would like to, our engineering department is planning to go out and to talk to businesses to get their ideas of what they would like to see. We bring a proposal and give them an opportunity to comment if they would like to.
All right, so this is not on the agenda tonight?
So it's not on the
Okay,
agenda,
all right.
but that is what we're leaning towards right now
Gotcha.
as far as street signs that say no parking here at a corner.
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to educate, the businesses about not parking 15 feet from each intersection.
All right.
As opposed to putting signs or painting curbs, which is a way to do it, but it's, it can become a maintenance.
More costly is the way to do it versus just talking.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
If they understand that,
Right,
better.
right. Because we don't think they're typically patients.
Well-
We're keeping the parking space, because there's plenty of parking.
Yeah.
And if you go, yeah, and if you go by there, they are basically the same three vehicles.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, basically, it's the same three.
Q9, yeah.
So, yeah, and I saw one today, looked like a staff member coming from the business office,
Okay.
going towards those vehicles, so, saying it's employees, but happen to be the same three cars. If they're not, they're very similar. Okay. All right, sounds good to me.
All right.
I don't know. Anything else? Nope. If there's not, this meeting is adjourned. All right.
What was her son's name?
On your sheet. Oh, no, it's not. It's not, is it?
Alan J. Janelle.
Where?
Overland,
Overland?
which is in that.
Mm-hmm. We're taking a swing at that policy. I think it'll be a good idea. I think people will be interested.
I'll pick it up and
We need to bounce it around. Sounds like there may not be a rush. I hate to rush it, but it sounds like there may not be one. She doesn't have the sign, so.
I think VDOT's kind of done some of the.
yeah, they have, I've glossed over that, I haven't read it word for word, I'm not gonna sit here and say I have, because I haven't.
Right.
But I think it's probably a very, we reference a lot of other VDOT criteria for transportation and drainage and stuff. It's a good template, but, yeah, I'll get started on it. I am gonna reference, wait, so that's what VDOT land is for, basically a right-of-way permit. Right-of-way for hire. That's kind of
And
where
that's
I'm.
consistent with, with if any contractors working within the right of way.
Yes, yeah.
They have to
No
get
different
within the
than
town, that's what.
Verizon or AEP or somebody putting things in our right of way. And with the right-of-way permit, it trips a lot of other criteria that is, I don't want to say onerous, but it steps up the level of responsibility.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm.